Hello, fellow mushroom people. Today I will be doing my March wrap-up video. Okay, so today is the 31st of March. The weather outside is great. It's like 24 degrees Celsius outside, so the sun's out. It's really warm. Also, the pigeons outside our bathroom window, they just hatched their eggs and now they are raising two kind of ugly pigeon babies that will turn into some beautiful eagles at one point in their life, probably. But anyway, so let's talk about the books that I read in the past few weeks. So the first one I want to talk about is Descendant of the Crane by Joan. This one I did not finish. I talked about this book a bit more in my Battle of the Books video. And let me just say that I did not feel like reading it. So it was more like a gut decision for me to DNF this. Because I felt like if I was going on now, it wouldn't make me happy. And not at all. And it was also kind of boring and the characters were not that interesting, so I dropped it. But if you're interested to hear more about this book, you can check out the other video for that. Okay, so the next books I did finish and I liked most of them. So let me just quickly show this one. This is Ruinsong. This was another participant in my Battle of the Books bracket tournament. And let me just say it did not win. So this one was also not that great a read for me. But I did finish it because, in contrast to Descendant of the Crane, this one was at least kind of entertaining. And it was very fast-paced and an easy read, so I ended up finishing this. I will probably never read it again, but yeah, so if you want to know more about Ruinsong, just go to the other video as well and then you can find out about it. Okay, and so this is the last book that has its own video, and this is We Need New Names by NoViolet Bulawayo. So I did a whole review for that book. I really enjoyed reading this. It's a shorter book, it's literary fiction, and it's quite heavy on its themes sometimes, but I think it's really interesting, especially if you want to read about how migrating to another country can impact your feeling of identity and belonging, and so how you're not welcome in the country you move to, but you also don't really belong to the country you came from anymore. And for that I recommend checking it out. It's also a very nice account of a girl who lives in an African slum. So the protagonist in this book, she grows up very poor, and yeah, she's still seeing things that happen to her as quite positive experiences, and it's definitely worth checking out. Okay, so now I want to talk about the books that I didn't really talk about before. So the one that I started in the first half of March is The Kingdom of Liars by Martell. So this is an adult fantasy novel. It's around 600 pages. So this book is about Michael Kingman, who in the beginning of the book, so it starts with his trial for murdering the king. So that's where the book begins, with him at the trial, being what's the word I'm looking for? So he is found guilty of committing that crime and he's about to be executed, and then we jump back a few weeks, I think, in time and find out how it all happened. So I think the first 200 pages of this book were a very quick read for me. I thought it was a very fast-paced and easy-to-read book. So the characters were not that interesting. Michael Kingman himself, so the protagonist, he's very bland, and he's also a very angry person because his father, he allegedly murdered the prince a few years back, and that's why him and his siblings, they became outcasts in the city. and now they live really impoverished, so they still have quite okay lives, I guess. But they are shunned by the nobility, and he isn't satisfied with that kind of life. So I did finish this, but at some points in the book I thought about DNFing this, so it wasn't that great. There's a lot going on. So for me it felt like the author had a lot of ideas, so many ideas that he just wanted to cram into one book. There's so many characters. So just let me give you an example. So we have Michael Kingman, the protagonist. He has a brother and a sister, which is fine. Then he has a friend, a male friend. He's like his friend. And this friend has a younger brother. And then he has another friend who's also a male friend. And he has a younger brother as well. So we have two friends with younger brothers who are not really connected to one another, maybe a little bit. And also things were happening. And there were many things that were happening. So there's a rebellion. So the rebellion leader has a connection to Michael somehow. But he also lost his memories. And then there's this endless waltz where he wants to participate. And then there's another noble who he has to like watch over. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And there's also a mercenary and another girl, the corrupt prince. Is just full of characters who just appear out of nowhere. And I think for a first book in a series, this could have done with a lot less characters and events and things happening, which is a bit sad because I think this book isn't really that uninteresting. So it has quite an interesting magic system. So using your magic too much in this world can lead to like a permanent memory loss. And I think that's a very interesting concept. Also, so I think I've shown the American cover before. There's this broken moon on the cover, and that's also in this book because somehow the moon broke into pieces, and sometimes pieces of that moon are falling down from the sky. And that's really interesting. That's a great concept. But the rest wasn't interesting, and so I will not continue on with the series. I finished it though, and I didn't really enjoy it that much. I don't know why I finished it. I guess I thought that in the end we would get like an interesting twist, because it starts with his trial and how he murdered the king, and it was all working towards that point, so the book kept my attention, but it wasn't a satisfying conclusion, and that's really sad actually. Okay, so the next book I read is The Seventh Perfection by Daniel Polansky. So this is a short novella. I actually bought this book because of the cover art, which is really pretty. And I decided to pick it up because I wanted something short. I actually read this in one day, I think. Yeah. So this book is quite interesting because all the chapters, let me just find one, they have this, like the title of the chapter is The Character Who Is Speaking. And the whole chapter is just the account of what that character, whose perspective we are following right now, what this character is saying. So you never really get to see the main character's thoughts as she moves through the city. So I thought that was quite an interesting concept. So the story is actually about a woman who is looking for another woman in the city, and that's why she gets sent to all those different characters and talks to them. I think the book is written in that way because the protagonist, she is the God King's amanuensis, which means that she has like a perfect memory, and I think that's why the author decided to go for that writing style. I have to say it's not my preferred writing style, but it was quite interesting. Also, I really enjoyed the world building in this book. It was really fascinating to me how a book that just relied on what one person said in each chapter had such a rich world building and just triggered my brain to imagine all those different locations where the main character went. And that was really great. And I would totally pick up a book that was set in this universe on the city that it takes place in, if it was written like a normal novel. Because I really enjoyed this city. And yeah, I think this isn't the greatest book ever written, but I think it's not that uninteresting actually. So if you want to read something that's written in a kind of different style than your usual novel or novella, I would suggest picking it up. It's a very short read. It's actually quite expensive for a book of this length. That's just like $15 American. So I don't know, I think the ebook must be a bit cheaper. But yeah, I enjoyed this book and it was a very quick read for me. Okay, so the final book that I finished in the second half of March is Greenglass House by Kate Milford. So this is a middle grade mystery novel. So this is set in the titular Greenglass House, which is like a hotel in a smuggler town. And each year, so the protagonist Milo, he's like a 12-year-old boy who lives in this house with his parents, who are the innkeepers. And each year they always get the same guests, essentially. And in this year, though, a few days before Christmas, a lot of illustrious people show up at the hotel. So he wants to figure out why those people are here, what's their motivation for coming to this place. And I must say at first this book was very intriguing, so I was really interested to know why all those characters were there and what their motivations were. I have to admit though that over time this interest waned a bit because it felt like it was too long and not enough was happening. And it might be because this, like I said, it's a YA book, so nothing spectacular happens. So sometimes things get stolen and he has to find them and bring them back to their owners. But it wasn't that interesting to read. There's also a twist at the end, which I saw coming from like page 12. I don't know, not really page 12, but it was quite obvious to me. Again, I think I said that in my Orphans of the Tide review or in the wrap-up video where I talked about it, which also had a twist that I saw coming. And I think, again, that if you are a younger reader, like 12 years old, that it still might surprise you what's happening. But as an adult who has experienced other books before, it wasn't that twisty for me. But still, the cover looks great, right? Yeah, so ultimately this one was entertaining. The second half wasn't that great for me. So the beginning was great, I was really interested, and then it went in a kind of different direction. Also, I had so much trouble. Just there were two female characters who were around the same age who came to this house. They were called Clem and Georgie, so totally different names, but I couldn't differentiate between them. So for me, they were the same person. I don't know why. It was so one had blue hair, one had red hair, and they were that different? I think they were quite similar, and that's why I could never tell who was who, and it was so confusing for me. I don't know why. I don't usually have that kind of problems. So, but yeah, so it was still fun to read, and I don't know, it looks pretty. Okay, and those are all the books that I read in the second half of March. There's still two books that I'm currently reading. The first one is The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams. This one got recommended to me in my the book of my dreams video, where I was talking about that I wanted to read a fantasy novel about a kind of hopeless and dark world with some more creative fantasy and horror elements. And so I'm like 100 pages in, and so far this one hasn't disappointed me. So it's given me many things that I really enjoy, and it is very dark and very hopeless, and I'm very curious to see where it goes. I think the second and third book are already out, so if this one's great, I can just read on in the series, and that's cool. Okay, so let me just quickly tell you what it's about. So, the city of Ebora once glittered with gold. Now its streets are stalked by wolves. Tormalin the Oathless has no taste for waiting to die, while the realm of his ancestors falls to pieces. Talk about a guilt trip. When eccentric explorer Lady Vincenza Vintage de Garçon offers him employment, he sees a way out, even when they are joined by a fugitive witch with a tendency to set things on fire. The prospect of facing down monsters and retrieving artifacts is preferable to the abomination left behind. But not everyone is willing to let the empire collapse, and the adventurers are soon drawn into a tangled conspiracy of magic and war. The Jurelia are coming, and the ninth rain must fall. So it has all this cryptic lore that I'm looking for so far, and I'm really enjoying that. So I think I will finish it soon, because it's really gripping and really interesting. And the second book that I'm still reading, that I kind of picked up at random, and I want to do a video about it, where I say, so I think I filmed the first part already when I ordered the book. I was like, so this book popped up on my news feed, and it just says that it's about stuff, and it just said the title and the author, and it said that it was like a great debut novel. And so I went to the homepage of my local bookstore and just typed in the title, and it showed up, and it said it was available, so I ordered it, and then it took 3 weeks to arrive. So, and the book I'm talking about is The Lamplighters by Emma Stonex, which has a gorgeous cover. I really, really, really love the cover. It's so pretty. So I hadn't read the back or anything about the book. The only thing I knew was that it took place in 1972. And that it had something to do with a lighthouse, because that's on the cover. So from what I can tell, I've only read 80 pages of this so far. It's about 3 lighthouse keepers who are vanished. So when their replacements showed up at the lighthouse to replace them, they were just gone. And so there's this mystery surrounding why they vanished. And so far there's this investigator, or he's an author in the year 1992, so 20 years after this happened, and he wants to figure out why they went missing, and he's talking to the wives of the lighthouse keepers. And there's also an account of 1972 from those lighthouse keepers and what they experienced in this lighthouse. And so far it's really interesting. So I was, from the beginning, I was really interested in this mystery surrounding their disappearance. And I'm really looking forward to figuring out what was going on in this lighthouse. And yeah, I think so far it's a good book. And I want to finish this quite soon. It's not that long, it's just like 350 pages, so this is quite a quick read for me, I think. But I think it will get its own video, and then I will talk about it in more detail. Okay, and those are all the books that I read in the second half of March. If you read any of those books, feel free to leave a comment or just write down below what you've read in March, and if you have any recommendations. And yeah, see you next time.